Some rocks just sit there. And then there are the ones that seem to break the rules. Stone that balances where it shouldn't, splits where it shouldn't, stands where gravity insists it can't. Across every continent, in deserts and fjords, jungles and open ocean, formations like these have puzzled the people who found them long before anyone had a word for geology. Some were carved by nothing but wind and time. Others were shaped by human hands using tools we still don't fully understand. A few remain unexplained even now, sitting quietly in the landscape while theories pile up around them. What they share isn't an origin story. It's a feeling, that instinctive pause when something ancient looks less like nature and more like intention. Over the next few minutes, we're traveling to the strangest rock formations on Earth, the ones that make geologists reach for their notebooks and everyone else reach for their camera. Let's go looking. Al-Nusla Rock Formation, Saudi Arabia. Somewhere in the Tamar Desert, two slabs of sandstone rise out of flat gravel, and between them runs a cut so clean it looks machined. The split is nearly perfectly vertical, not jagged, not weathered into shape by wind or sand, a straight line wide enough to walk through, dividing one rock into two mirror halves. Locals call it Al-Nusla. Visitors have called it everything from a UFO's calling card to proof of some lost civilization with tools we no longer possess. Geologists offer a quieter explanation. The rock likely fractured along a natural joint, a weak seam already present in the stone, and centuries of erosion simply widened the crack until light could pass straight through. No lasers, no ancient machinery, just time, wind, and a fault line the desert found first. What no one disputes is the artwork. Faint petroglyphs are carved into the base, horses, camels, riders, left by people who stood in this same spot thousands of years before satellites ever photographed it from above. Two halves, one shadow, and a gap that seems to defy the very ground it stands on. Baalbek, Lebanon. 3 stones, each one heavier than a fully loaded Boeing 747, stacked into a wall 20 feet above the ground in a country with no cranes for 2,000 years. The Romans called this place Heliopolis, City of the Sun, and built one of their grandest temples here, dedicated to Jupiter. But beneath their columns sits something older and stranger, a foundation platform built from megaliths so massive that modern engineers still argue over how they were moved. The largest block ever quarried by human hands lies nearby, abandoned mid-transport in a limestone pit. Locals call it the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, nearly 1,000 tons of rock that never left the ground. No inscriptions explain the method. No records survive of the ropes, the ramps, or the sheer number of hands it would have taken. Some historians point to older civilizations who may have laid the groundwork long before Rome ever arrived, using techniques lost to time. Others insist it's simply Roman ambition, brute force, and enough sledges to move a mountain 1 meter at a time. What's certain is this: Baalbek doesn't just hold ruins. It holds a question that stone alone refuses to answer. Balanced rock, United States. 128 feet of sandstone, balanced on a pedestal you could barely fit a school bus around. Gravity says this shouldn't work. Arches National Park says otherwise. The formation sits in Utah's high desert, a boulder the size of 3 school buses perched atop a narrower spire of rock, like something paused mid-fall and simply never finished falling. Wind carved it this way, grain by grain, over millions of years, stripping away the softer sandstone around a harder cap of stone that refused to erode at the same pace. It won't last forever. Its smaller twin, once known as chip off the old block, collapsed in the early 1970s without warning. One winter it stood, the next spring it was rubble at the base of its parent rock. Balanced rock is next in line, geologists say, though next here could mean another decade or another 1,000 years. Nobody's placing bets on the exact date. For now, it stands exactly where erosion left it. A boulder the size of a house, resting on math that only the desert seems to understand. El Peñón de Guatapé, Colombia. Climb 740 steps cut straight into the granite, and the reward at the top isn't a view of mountains. It's a view of nothing solid at all, just water threading between hills in every direction, like the land itself had been shattered into puzzle pieces. The rock itself is a geological outsider. A single granite monolith rising over 200 meters straight out of flat farmland, with no mountain range around it to explain its presence. It simply stands alone, formed some 70 million years ago from magma that cooled deep underground and was later exposed as the softer rock around it wore away. For centuries, it was sacred ground to the indigenous Tahami people, who considered it untouchable. The lake wrapping around its base tells a newer story. In the 1970s, a hydroelectric dam flooded the valley below, swallowing farms and roads and turning dry hilltops into a maze of islands. What looks like a natural wonder from above is really 2 timelines colliding, ancient stone meeting a landscape reshaped within living memory. Locals still argue over which neighboring town technically owns the rock. From the top, it's easy to see why everyone wants to claim it. Fairy chimneys, Cappadocia, Turkey. A stone hat balanced on a stone cone, standing 30 feet tall, in a valley that looks like it belongs on another planet entirely. There are thousands of them here. No two are exactly alike. The story starts with fire. Millions of years ago, volcanoes across central Turkey buried this entire region under thick layers of ash, which hardened over time into a soft, pale rock called tuff. On top of that came something harder, basalt, laid down by later eruptions. Two very different materials, stacked one on the other, waiting for the landscape to reveal what would happen next. Rain and wind did the rest. Over thousands of years, water carved through the soft tuff far faster than it could wear down the tougher basalt above. What was left behind were narrow pillars of stone, each one capped by a harder boulder acting like an umbrella, protecting the rock beneath it from erosion. Where the cap eventually falls, the chimney erodes into a cone. Where it survives, the mushroom shape holds, sometimes for centuries longer than its neighbors. But Cappadocia's strangeness doesn't stop at the surface. Beneath these formations lie entire underground cities, some reaching 8 levels deep, carved by hand starting as early as the Hittite era and expanded by early Christians hiding from persecution. Tunnels connect them for miles. Some of these chimneys aren't just rock, they're hollowed out, turned into homes, chapels, even wine cellars with windows cut straight into the stone. Giant's Causeway, Northern Ireland. 40,000 black columns packed together so tightly and so evenly that for centuries nobody believed nature made them. Most are 6-sided, some have 5, 7, even 8. Almost none are the same height. Legend explains it simply. An Irish giant named Finn McCool supposedly built the causeway to walk across the sea and fight a Scottish rival. And when you look at the matching basalt columns on Scotland's Isle of Staffa, 60 miles away, it's easy to see why the story stuck. 2 ends of a bridge, torn apart in the middle, exactly where the giant's battle would have left it. The real cause is just as violent, only slower. Around 60 million years ago, this coastline sat above intense volcanic activity. Molten basalt poured out and pooled into a lava lake, and as it cooled from the top down and the bottom up simultaneously, the rock contracted and cracked, not randomly, but into the most efficient shape possible for releasing that stress evenly in all directions. Hexagons, mathematically, do that better than almost any other shape. Nature wasn't showing off, it was just following the path of least resistance. Up close, the columns aren't flat-topped pillars at all. Many are gently curved, stacked like a stone staircase descending into the Atlantic, worn smooth by 60 million years of waves. Some rise higher than a house. Others sit low enough to walk across without noticing you're standing on a geometric anomaly. Geologists have their explanation. Locals still tell it their way. And somewhere between the physics and the folklore, the causeway keeps doing exactly what it's always done, disappearing into a cold grey sea, one perfect hexagon at a time. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. Rewrite the history books. That's essentially what a Kurdish shepherd did in 1994 when he noticed limestone slabs poking out of a hillside his family had farmed for generations. Slabs that turned out to be 11,600 years old. To put that in perspective, this site predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years, predates the pyramids by 7,000 and predates writing, the wheel, and pottery entirely. It was built by hunter-gatherers, people who, according to everything archaeologists once assumed, shouldn't have had the social organization to build monuments at all. Agriculture wasn't even invented yet, and somehow they carved and raised T-shaped limestone pillars weighing up to 10 tons, arranged in circles, some standing 16 feet tall. The carvings only deepen the mystery. Foxes, scorpions, vultures and boars cover the pillars in relief, along with abstract symbols nobody has fully decoded. 2 central pillars in each enclosure appear almost human. Arms carved along their sides, hands meeting at the front, as if the stones themselves were standing in for people, or gods, or something in between. Then, around 8000 BCE, the builders did something nobody expected. They buried it. Deliberately, methodically, they filled the entire complex with rubble and soil, sealing it away for 10,000 years, as if the site had served its purpose and needed to disappear. Golden Rock, Myanmar. A boulder the size of a house, gilded entirely in gold leaf, balanced on the very edge of a cliff at 3,600 feet, held in place, according to legend, by a single strand of the Buddha's hair. Physically, it shouldn't work. The rock appears to rest on nothing more than a sliver of granite, tilting outward over the mountainside with what looks like barely any contact between the 2 surfaces. Pilgrims who climb up to touch it often describe rocking it slightly with their hands, and it moves just enough to remind you how little is actually holding it there. Geologists point to erosion, a naturally occurring pedestal, and centuries of gradual settling that locked the boulder into a precarious but stable position. Buddhist tradition tells a different story, that a hermit monk, gifted a strand of the Buddha's hair by the Buddha himself, searched for a rock shaped like his own head to hide it inside, and found this one, which has stayed exactly in place ever since. Every layer of gold leaf covering the rock today was placed there by hand, one pilgrim at a time, over centuries. Men only, following tradition, walking barefoot up the mountain to press a small square of gold onto stone that has never once needed the gesture to keep standing. Hvítserkur, Iceland. From the shore, it looks like a dragon frozen mid-drink, its long neck bent down to the sea, 2 legs planted in the sand like it stopped there and simply forgot how to move again. 15 meters of dark basalt, standing alone in the water off Iceland's Vatnsnes Peninsula, riddled with holes where waves have punched clean through the rock over thousands of years. 2 of those holes sit low enough to form what look unmistakably like legs, which is exactly why locals never called it a rock at all. They called it a troll. Icelandic folklore holds that trolls turn to stone the instant sunlight touches them. This one, the story goes, was caught outside at dawn, mid-stride, trying to destroy the bells of a nearby church it despised the sound of, and never made it back to darkness in time. The Icelandic government has since reinforced its base with concrete, quietly admitting what the waves already knew. that even a troll frozen in stone erodes eventually, one tide at a time. At low tide, you can walk out and stand beneath it, dwarfed by something that folklore insists was once alive, and geology insists never was. Though standing there, in the wind, it's not hard to believe both. Karlu, Devil's Marbles, Australia. Scattered across the outback like something dropped from a great height, thousands of granite boulders sit stacked in impossible pairs, some balanced so precisely on top of each other that a strong gust feels like it should be enough to send them tumbling. None ever do. To the Warramungu and other Aboriginal groups of the region, these aren't rocks at all. They're eggs of the rainbow serpent, laid down during the dreaming as the ancestral being carved out this land. Sacred, alive with meaning, and central to ceremonies that have continued here for tens of thousands of years. Geologists tell a slower version of the same story. Granite formed deep underground over 1 billion years ago, later exposed as the softer rock around it eroded away, then split and rounded by heat and cold, cycling relentlessly across the desert until the sharp edges wore into spheres. What makes them strange isn't just the shape, it's the sound. Some boulders, split cleanly in two, reveal perfectly matched halves that once fit together like a puzzle, now separated by centimeters, sitting in the exact spot they cracked apart in. At sunset, the whole field turns a deep, burning red, and the boulders throw long shadows across the spinifex grass. A landscape that looks arranged by hand, shaped instead by 1 billion years of nobody touching it at all. Kjeragbolten, Norway. A single boulder, 5 cubic meters of stone, wedged into a crack between two cliff faces, 1,000 meters above a fjord. Below it, nothing but air, all the way down to black water. People walk out and stand on it anyway. It isn't attached to anything. No cement, no anchor, just a rock that tumbled from a glacier during the last ice age and happened to lodge itself perfectly between the walls of a narrow chasm, held in place purely by the angle of the fall and the width of the gap it landed in. 10,000 years later, it hasn't shifted. Reaching it requires hours of scrambling up wet granite through the Norwegian mountains, with no ropes required for most of the route and no safety rail waiting at the top. What greets hikers instead is the boulder itself, roughly the size of a small car, suspended over a drop steep enough that the fjord below looks less like water and more like a photograph of water. Some step onto it without hesitation. Others get within a few feet and turn back, unable to make their legs finish the job logic already approved. The rock doesn't care either way. It's been holding that position since before anyone was around to be afraid of it. Moai statues, Easter Island, Chile. Nearly 900 stone figures, some standing 30 feet tall, scattered across an island so remote that the nearest inhabited land sits over 2,000 kilometers away. For centuries, the biggest mystery wasn't who carved them. It was how anyone moved them at all. The Rapa Nui people quarried nearly all of these statues from a single volcanic crater, Rano Raraku, carving each Moai directly into the hillside before somehow separating and transporting it, sometimes miles, across an island with no wheels, no draft animals, and no metal tools. Early theories ranged from log rollers to alien intervention. Then, in 2012, researchers tested something the islanders' own oral traditions had insisted all along, that the statues walked. Using ropes attached at 3 points, teams of people rocked each Moai side to side, essentially waddling the statue forward on its rounded base, upright the entire time, the way you might shuffle a heavy refrigerator without lifting it. It worked. A 20-ton statue moved 100 meters by rhythm and rope alone. But the island holds a darker chapter too. Sometime after the statues were raised, nearly all of them were deliberately toppled, pushed face down into the dirt one by one, likely during a period of clan warfare and resource collapse that some researchers link to ecological disaster on the island itself. The Moai standing today, gazing inland with their backs to the sea, are almost entirely the result of 20th century restoration efforts. Millions of years apart, and still the same question follows every single one: how? Some answers came from science: erosion, magma, pressure, and enough time to make the impossible look ordinary. Other answers never came at all, left instead to legend, to oral tradition, to explanations that predate the word geology by thousands of years. Maybe that's the real pattern here. Not the stone itself, but our need to explain it, to turn silence into story, whether the story wears a lab coat or comes from a grandmother's telling around a fire. Long after we're gone, most of these formations will still be standing, weathering a little more each year, changing shape too slowly for anyone to notice in a single lifetime, the way they've always changed, with or without someone there to film it. If one of these left you staring a little longer than expected, that's the whole point. The Earth doesn't need permission to be strange. Thanks for traveling with us. If you want more places like these, subscribe and we'll keep finding the parts of this planet that don't quite make sense.